Hello, I'm Madeline, and today I'll be talking about Movement 2 of Webern's 5 Movements for String Quartet. I'll be using PDFs of the score to explain the pitches I analyzed. Let's begin by talking about my interpretation of the narrative analysis, because I use this to guide my analysis of the pitch content. I hear a battle between short notes and long notes throughout the movement. So as we begin, we hear long sustained tones here that are then interrupted by this G natural right here. We then meet this long fermata in measure 1 that is followed by moving eighth notes. So I think that the long sustained notes represent order or motive A, and the eighth notes represent transgression or motive B, as the eighth notes and the 16th notes and the shorter notes are pushing the piece forward while the sustained notes want to take their time. So as we continue, we see constant battles of long notes and short notes. So we see these the short notes, or the eighth notes, that are then interrupted by longer sustained notes. So I think that they're both interrupting each other, and that represents more of a battle. That doesn't mean that one is winning over the other one yet. So we see this, and as we continue, we then see these 16th note pizzicatos in measure 4. And these are the shortest notes in the piece so far, and I believe that they cause a shift in the next phrase, because we now see 16th notes pushing the melody and the melodic line forward, where before these pizzicatos we had kind of sporadic 16th notes, but they weren't necessarily extremely short, and I don't think that they were sort of pushing things forward. So now we start to see eighth notes and 16th notes combined that are moving the piece forward. And as we continue through these battles, we all together lose as we continue, we see these same battles between long notes and short notes to long note, and things like that. So then we all together lose 16th notes and pizzicato notes after this final pitch in measure 11. I believe that this is order taking control, and we still have eighth notes in the violin 2 part, but these eighth notes are marked with tenutos and slurs, making me think that while motive B's rhythm is still present, motive A is controlling how this sounds. We then end on a fermata, leading me to believe that order succeeds over transgression, with an overarching sense of defeat throughout the entire movement. So this represents tragedy. I also started to analyze sections of the piece that I felt were important. I now want to discuss measures 4 and 13, in particular these 4 notes and these notes here. Now, to me, measure 4 ends the beginning phrase of the movement, and measure 13 ends the final phrase. Therefore, these 2 measures are related both because of phrasing and because of transposition. The set 6-10 in measure 4 and 9-1 in measure 13 are related by T3. The set 7-11 in measure 4 and 0-4 in measure 13 are related by T5. I then looked at the repeating dotted 8th 16th note motive in measures 5 to 6, specifically right here and here. The set 0-4 in measure 5 and 2-6 in measure 6 are related by T2. Next, I noticed that Webern used the motive of an 8th note slurred to a quarter note in measures 8 to 9, specifically here and here. So the set 9-1 in measure 8 and 2-6 in measures 8 to 9 are related by T5. I noticed that in the 3 examples that are highlighted here, Webern uses a combination of short and long notes. So here he uses 16th notes that are also pits, and here he uses fermatas. Here he combines an eighth note with a quarter note to create a motive, and here he uses a dotted eighth note to a 16th note. So a dotted eighth note being longer than an eighth note, and a 16th note being shorter. So I believe that he used transpositions to play with combining short notes and long notes, so he was able to keep the same motives, just using different pitches. So now let's talk about some other areas that I also felt were important. For example, I analyzed the first fermata and the last fermata, figuring that these pitches must be held longer for a reason. These are also the only fermatas in the movement. So I specifically looked at these three pitches here with the fermata, and I also looked at down here, I looked at these three pitches with this fermata. And the pitch class set 259 in measure 1 and 904 in measure 13 have the same prime form 037. I also noticed how the two lower voices in measures 5 and 12 both have dotted quarter notes, so I decided to analyze these two measures, and I specifically looked at these notes in measure 5, and I came down to measure 12 and looked at these specific pitches here. The set 110256 in measure 5 and 910034 in measure 12 have the same prime form 01367. Also, when I was listening to the piece, I was particularly drawn to measure 3. So I specifically looked at these pitches and then these pitches, and the set 379 and 7111 have the same prime form 026. Finally, I noticed that Webern uses E flat to F natural repeatedly throughout the third line in the violin 2 part. So I'm looking right here. And these two are, E flat and F are 2 semitones apart. Then this motion is transferred from the violin 2 part to the viola part here. And it changes to E natural to F natural, which are 1 semitone apart. The violin 2 part then ends on a D flat, and the viola part then ends on an E natural, which are 3 semitones apart. I believe that Webern is using this motion in the violin 2 part and the viola line to stretch and compress intervals. Thank you so much for watching this presentation, and let me know if you have any questions.